You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. 8 people killed, including 6 Asian women, by a white man who supposedly was angry about his sexual addiction. Now, what's interesting about this story is he bypassed strip clubs. He specifically kills Asian women. But the cops are saying, nah, he was having a bad day, and they do not want to call it a hate crime or race was a motive. That's strange to me. It's strange to me that that would be the decision of those police. We are seeing an increase against Asian Americans. President Joe Biden, when he signed an executive order specifically talking about this. I remember there were a lot of black people who were upset. Oh, I can't believe he's doing that. People hit me on Twitter and YouTube. Folks, we're seeing this. We're seeing the attacks. We're seeing what's taking place in this country. Violence is violence. This is a race-based attack that we're seeing. We can't deny the reality or be clueless like other folks on this very issue. Joining me right now is Lecia Brooks. She is Chief of Staff for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Glad to have you with us. Can you, again, just share with me how you felt when you watched that news conference of the spokesman in Atlanta stand there and, well, the guy was having a bad day. I have never heard a cop describe somebody who admits to killing 8 people as he was having a bad day.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for having me on. He just revealed who he was. And if I could refer back to your earlier guest that was talking about kind of white nationalist talking points and white nationalist agenda, it was completely clear that he did not care anything at all about the victims of that horrific crime, that he set out to protect the perpetrator of this violent and racist act. We have to remember that, as you were alluding to, unchecked violence and racist actions against one group, when they go unchecked, they will spill over into another group. Now, it's important for us to remember, of course, that in this country, anti-Asian racism has existed forever, right? Forever. As had misogyny and white supremacy. And these two things, racism, misogyny, patriarchal violence, go hand in hand. And it, as you say, it's up to each of us to stand up against it. I'm disgusted by the clips you showed earlier about the vote, disgusted but not surprised by the vote on the Violence Against Women Act, especially in light of this horrific killing that took place in Atlanta just Tuesday.
When President Biden signed that executive order, specifically dealing with the increase in anti-Asian American discrimination, there were some people who were going, I don't see this as a big deal. But we've seen this ratchet up. And to your point, other groups attacked. Remember the shooting that took place in the synagogue in Pittsburgh, other attacks that took place. And this refusal, this reluctance of Americans to call it white domestic terrorism. There were some people calling this guy a kid. A 21-year-old person a kid?
Right. A black child would not be offered that opportunity. But let's talk about the increase in anti-Asian attacks. And of course, we could trace it back to, or this particular iteration, back to the former president and his rhetoric, his anti-Asian rhetoric, his consistent insistence on blaming, if you will, Asians and Asian Americans for the coronavirus pandemic, and his referring to it with the use of racial epithets. This increase in anti-Asian rhetoric has produced an increase in actual hate crimes that target Asian folks. We all heard about the 2-year-old and the 6-year-old siblings who were stabbed along with their father in Midland, Texas, last year. And then, of course, the 91-year-old man who was assaulted and knocked over. These are elders. These are children. And now we see women targeted because they're Asian and vulnerable.
Y'all have been tracking these organizations for a very, very long time. The FBI director has testified at the greatest threat of domestic terrorism is white domestic terrorism. Yet this unwillingness to confront white supremacy, to call it what it is. And frankly, there are people in the media, mainstream media, who won't even go as far as we do in calling it what it is. And I'm going, yo, you're making this easy, but trust me, if a Muslim had walked into a nail shot and killed 6 white women, oh, they'll be turning those communities upside down all across America.
You're exactly right. We need to call it what it is. If we have a hope of changing this, if we don't call out white supremacy, if we don't call out the increase in the white nationalist movement, the Southern Poverty Law Center, as you mentioned, has been talking about this for decades, and we have tracked a continued increase in the number of white nationalist groups and individuals who they proved on January 6th that they're more than willing to engage in violence, political violence, anything to advance what they hope to see as a race war, which they believe will then return them to power and the possibility of a white ethno state. So we should not be surprised as that we'll continue to see this as we continue to mark the shifting demographics that occur across the United States, and as whites will become more of a numerical minority, we'll see a consistent uptick in these attacks. It's really it's about holding on to power.
Center. Yep, sorry. Absolutely. Lecia Brooks, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland. Bye-bye.
Greg Carr, I want to start with you. I saw this post by Andrew Yang that I found to be very interesting and problematic, Greg, where Yang was talking about what Asian Americans need to do to show their Americanness. And I really want to say to Brother Yang, guess what? Just like black people, you cannot assimilate into whiteness.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
You cannot.
No.
Unlike white Hispanics who can, Asian Americans, y'all can sit here and wave the flag all you want to. You can sit here and talk about the apple pie, everything else. Trust me, how you look is how they are going to target you.
Absolutely. Ask the Japanese who fought for the United States military during World War II at the same time that the Korematsu decision upheld the fact that their relatives were in concentration camps in this country. So yeah, Yang, Andrew Yang's that's an interesting comment by him. He visited Howard Law School when he was running for president, and watched him have an interesting dialogue with the students there. Yang is one of those people who doesn't really have a developed cultural theory in terms of America. He thinks in terms of dollars and cents, and so he kind of leaves space open that we just heard our sister Lecia Brooks really hit on. See, the power of whiteness is in its invisibility. Racism and misogyny are twins from the same womb. Whiteness, at the center of whiteness, is white maleness. You heard Lecia say that. So when Captain J. Baker, shout out to Captain J, he had to defend his brother because as another white man, he understood and that this killer, that Aaron Long, was, in the words of Captain J. Baker, fed up. That's important. Yes, bad day is important too, but fed up is the one I want to focus on because, as Lecia Brooks just said, there's a fear rising in this country. You talk about white fear all the time, Roland. What does Robert Aaron Long and what does Jay Baker share? As white men, they're seeing it all slip away, baby. It's starting to slip away now. And so we have to understand also, finally, that he's attacking these Asian Americans, these South Korean women and others, because he feels frustration that comes from the real center of whiteness and white maleness, which is fetishizing not just women. You don't find pornography in pre-colonial Africa. You don't find pornography in indigenous America. You find pornography, literally pornographia, the writing of harlots, coming out of Western Eurasia, chiefly France and other places. So you've already dehumanized women. And then when you talk about non-white women, you dehumanize them, but you have this fetish attraction to them that creates this internal conflict that you can only resolve by not dealing with yourself, but channeling it outward in terms of violence, self-hatred, and killing the object. So the question I would ask is, why the hell we got spas where you can go and have sex in the first place? All of this comes around the question of maleness, and at the center of maleness in this country is white maleness, and they are not going to stop. They're fed up, whether it be passing voting, blocking people from voting, or whether it be going and shooting up spas. These white men are fed up. We better wake up to this.
Reese, that when I see some folks, I saw some idiot Michael Coates on the YouTube chat room saying, "Oh, you're using the DNC notes. There isn't an uptick in anti-Asian American sentiment in this country." Yes, it is, dumbass. Yes, it is. And just because I'm black does not mean I cannot call out and stand up for Asian brother or sister who's been discriminated against, just like if someone was Latino, and I would damn sure hope that folks would stand up when it comes to black folks as well. And I think there's some black folks who are, well, I don't see them standing up for us, but guess what? How somebody else acts towards me does not dictate how I'm going to act towards them.
Absolutely. And Roland, this goes back to the point that we make multiple times a month on this show, particularly on Thursdays, about the way that white people, particularly white men, have been deputized, self-deputized, or even in some cases deputized by the actual police to eliminate, as Jay Baker said, the temptation, eliminate anybody that they feel like they can eliminate for any reason. That was what really has stood out to me when what the captain had said, is that this man had experienced some temptation and he wanted to eliminate that. You don't get to eliminate people, okay, for any reason, unless you are acting in self-defense, life or death situations. But you don't get to go out and buy a gun and hunt down Asian women because you can't control whatever the hell urges you supposedly have. But white people have been deputized in this country to eliminate Asian women, to eliminate black people who are minding their business, to harass them, to carry out, to assert some authority over us that they do not have. And that is the pervasive problem that we are all subject to. So no, this isn't just an Asian American problem, even though, yes, absolutely, in this case, we have to stand with our with the Asian community. But that mentality that drove this attack is the same mentality that drives the racial terrorism that black people are subjected to every single day. In the same way that this captain tried to rehabilitate instantly on the spot the image of a white domestic terrorist is the same reason why we don't see justice in our case, because they want to say, oh, he had a bad day, oh, he has an illness, or he has some other situation that's a mitigating factor. There's no mitigating factor for murder, and there's no mitigating factor for terrorism. And so we have to all, as a unit, stand up and say, this is unacceptable. Maybe next time we'll have more people standing with us, maybe not, but we are not exempt from this kind of behavior whatsoever, regardless of who it's perpetrated against.
Amisha, if you have a tax on Asian Americans, if you have a tax on Jewish synagogues, don't think for a second black folks are going to be bypassed. And what we are seeing, and we saw Donald Trump embrace, salute, empower, embolden these white militias, these white supremacists. You now have Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, and the military is saying that they are increasingly bothered with what they are seeing in terms of this white nationalist sentiment that is being fomented and coming and just moving throughout the U.S. military. This thing is real, and we can't just say, well, that's not us. They should worry about it. We don't have time to worry about it. No. We better be real concerned about these white militias and these white supremacist organizations.
You're absolutely right, Roland. There is a bed of ignorance that comes from anyone who believes that because this is happening to Asian people, Black people should not get. The frustration that I have with that is that we watched President Trump for 4 years castigate people of color, be it whether they were people from African nations, specifically calling out those as shithole countries, talking about African Americans in places like Baltimore and my home city of Chicago, throwing all types of shade and making it seem like Black people were redeemable. Black people were a problem. Black people were criminals, rapists, murderers. The exact same thing that he did to Latinos. And then comes COVID-19, and he chose to castigate people of Asian descent. He chose to make fun of Asian reporters. He chose to call this the China virus. He chose to basically, even when we saw time and time again during his administration where Asian people were being attacked, and they would ask him about it, and we saw him give a smile of glee. There was nothing that president did that did not further perpetuate a lot of the violence and the attacks that we've seen on people of color across this country. But as it relates to this case in Atlanta specifically, I do want to say that I don't buy the WAP defense. This is a white man who really sat back and had a conversation, and this is what he's going to use to try to get off, because he understands the Christian right well. The Christian right always wants to sexualize women, always wants to say that they're the threat, always wants to talk about a syntax and getting rid of porn and getting rid of, the places where women dance, the massage parlor, all of those things. They think he's falling down on this sword, knowing full well that he had a intent to target those individuals, to target those spaces because of the demographic of the women that he was targeting. And that's it, plain and simple.
And can I add to that, Roland? Because what the Asian American community is seeing is what we experience every time. When you're a person of color and you're a victim, you're the one who goes on trial. We don't know if these women were sex workers, and even if they were sex workers, that does not give anybody license to murder them. But now the onus has shifted from the fact that we're not talking about this as much as a hate crime, but we're talking about sex workers and what these women may or may not have been doing. And that's what they always do. It's disgusting. Before we even learn the name and the ages of these women, they're being characterized by the police as sex workers, or the insinuation is put out there. And that is disgusting. That's a violation of them. And I'm not saying disgusting. I'm not anti-sex worker, be clear, but I'm just saying we don't know what they were doing. And Mayor Keishla, at the bottom of her credit, said that these were legally operating businesses. But this is what they do. They deflect, and they put the attention, and they try to make the victims have to justify their humanity and whether or not their life was worth being eliminated or not.
That's right.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.